Hi everyone, welcome to Professor Academy's UGC NET Sociology YouTube live sessions. Good evening everyone. So today's class is also a continuation of our yesterday's class. So as you know, we are now discussing the unit 3 of our syllabus, which is basic concepts and institutions. So before starting our class, as you know, Professor Academy is now providing some classes as free YouTube live sessions so that everyone can get an idea about our actual course. So like it's basically like an introduction to our actual UGC NET Sociology course. And if you're finding these classes useful, you can actually join our course, sociology course also. The admission is open now, so if you are interested, you can join the classes. I will be providing more details about the class towards the end of this video. So now, without further delay, let's start our class. So today is the part 4 of our unit 3, which is basic concepts and institutions. And today we are going to discuss about these two concepts, which is social stratification and mobility. So in addition to this topic, there were other topics also included in this unit, like some other important topics like marriage, family and kinship, caste and class. So topics like that. So I have not included those topics in this parts of unit 3 because those topics actually need a separate class of their own, and we will be discussing those topics in a separate class because there are separate unit itself regarding these topics. Like there is a unit called family, marriage and kinship, like a separate unit, but they have just included those topics in this unit also. But we will be discussing topics like marriage, family, kinship and caste and class systems in different classes. So today we are now going to discuss about these two topics, which are social stratification and social mobility. So what is social stratification? As you all know, every society or all societies are different, or all societies are different based on various factors like sex, wealth, color, status, power, geography, etc. So all societies are marked by differences on various counts, like all these various things. And such kind of differences can be natural or man-made. Differences can be natural or man-made. And our society actually have a tendency to attach values to such differences in terms of superiority or inferiority, or we can say desirability or undesirability, or something like that. Our society always tends to attach values to such differences, like one is better, another one is bad, or one is superior, or the other is inferior, like that. So this attachment of values leads to evaluation of differences uh, as well. So this attachment of values leads to evaluation of differences, and these differences later form into inequalities. Is it clear? So it is famously known, or there is a famous saying that differences are created by nature, but it is man who creates inequalities. So differences are already there. It can be natural differences or it can be man-made differences. But once the society starts to attach values to these differences, like one thing is good, the other is bad, and when the society add values to these differences, this leads to the formation of inequality. And the social inequalities come into existence into every societies, and this makes inequalities culture specific. So inequalities are culture specific. One inequality existing in one culture might not be similar in other culture. It differs according to changing cultures, and these inequalities occur in specific patterns. So these patterns are understood through this concept of social stratification. So simply we can say what a social stratification is. It is a process in which social inequalities exist in the form of structural hierarchical strata, one placed above the other. So it is the process through which social inequalities exist in the form of structural hierarchical strata, one over the other. So Sutherland and Maxwell, they defined this social stratification as a process of differentiation which places some people higher than the other. So social stratification is a process of differentiation which places or puts someone higher than the other. So basically it is a process of creating someone is superior or someone is inferior. So that kind of a differentiation process is known as social stratification. And the stratification is viewed as a social process or a social phenomenon as well as a method. So it is a social process and it can be considered as a social method which is devised by sociologists to understand inequality in the society. Or sociologists consider the social stratification as a method to understand the inequality existing in a society. Okay. Then we already said that this social stratification is a social process. And as it is a social process, it can be visualized or it can be considered that or the social stratification have 4 sub processes. So the 4 sub processes of social stratification. First one is differentiation, which means that as we said earlier, differences in society exist socially as well as naturally. We can find social differences and natural differences in a society, and this differentiation exists in every society. Every society have at least one kind of differentiation. So this exists socially as well as naturally. Next process is evaluation. So these differences are evaluated or the differences get evaluated in terms of prestige, desirability, etc. And this evaluation leads to a feeling of superiority, inferiority, or as we said earlier, desirability or undesirability, etc. And we can say, for example, we can consider one example for this evaluation. In our Indian society, we can say apparently there is a some kind of value placed on there is a value placed on different skin colors, isn't it? That is a common common thing in our Indian society. There is more value is placed on different skin colors, and one color is evaluated as superior over the other. That is a feature of our Indian society, isn't it? Now that perspective is actually changing, but still there is more value placed on different skin colors, and one color is evaluated as superior over the other. So like that, differences get evaluated in terms of various factors. So that process is known as evaluation. Next process is ranking. So the ranking means we already talked about differences and inequalities. But these differences and inequalities not only exist in objective state, but they get compared. So that these differences get compared. And this ranking, people get ranked based on a set of common characteristics which are evaluated in terms of desirability and undesirability. People get ranked based on various factors of desirability and undesirability. This process is known as ranking. Then the last process is rewarding. So after doing all this differentiation, evaluation and ranking, the society develops a system of rewards and punishment in the form of differential opportunities to those belonging to different strata, and through this through giving such providing rewards and punishment, this would only strengthen the stratification. So after making this differentiation and evaluation, the society develops or society provides some kind of rewards or punishment. And this process of giving rewards or punishment, it's not like giving rewards like giving money to socially desirable people with socially desirable character, but it is like some people who have some desirable characters in society get rewarded in some particular way. For example, we can say they get better opportunities in education, or they get better opportunities in job, they get better social considerations, etc. So by reward we are meaning that, and by punishment we means that due to some undesirable characteristics, people may don't get any opportunities like other people who have some desirable characters. So due to this differentiation and evaluation, society develops a system of rewards and punishment, and this system of rewards and punishments only increase this inequality in society, and this would further increase stratification. Is it clear? So these are the four sub-processes of differentiation, sub-processes of social stratification: differentiation, evaluation, ranking, and rewarding. Okay. Now, the social strata, or the strata which forms as a result of social stratification. So, social strata are either closed or open. So in a closed strata, mobility is not possible. If mobility is not possible in a strata, it is known as a closed strata. For example, we can take caste. Caste is largely a closed stratification type. Mobility is not possible inside caste, isn't it? So mobility is considered as a closed strata. Then in open strata, this actually mobility is possible. Social mobility is possible in open strata. For example, uh, various institutions in modern democracies like bureaucracy. So it is an example for open stratification. So in open strata, mobility is possible, but in closed strata, mobility is not possible. So T.B. Baltimore classified social stratification into four forms or four types. They are slavery, estate, caste, and class. So first one is slavery. So slavery is the earliest form of social stratification. We knew that. It is the earliest form of social stratification. And it is the legally recognized division of society into slaves and citizens. The society get divided into slaves and citizens. And the citizens have the citizenship right, but the slaves don't have any citizenship rights. And the slavery existed in most of the parts of Europe and other ancient nations from 500 BC to 600 BC. So this is the first form of social stratification given by T.B. Baltimore. Next one is estate systems. So this estate system is a later form of social stratification according to Baltimore, and this estate system developed as a result of development of feudal systems, and they were established in Europe in the 7th century and they lasted until the 17th century. So it developed in the 7th century and lasted until the 17th century for a long period. And these estates were legally defined, and each of the estates have had special privileges and duties. And these feudal estates were also political groups. They were also political groups, and each of the estates had special privileges and duties. And these estates are divided into, or it includes serf, clergy, and feudal lords or the nobility as the three estates. So these are the three estates: serf, clergy, and the feudal lord. Feudal lord is also known as nobility. So as we said earlier, each of the estates had their own special privileges and duties. So the nobility were ordained to defend all, and the clergy to pray for all, and the commoners or serf to provide food for all or to work for all. So feudal lords were in control of the land. They had the control of the land. And the clergy and feudal lords together controlled the economy, and they together oppressed the commoners, or they together oppressed the serf. Is it clear? So that is the second form, which is estate system. And the estate is divided into three: commoners or serf, clergy, and the feudal lord. Next form is caste. So caste is a type of social stratification in which occupation, status, and rights are fixed by birth. So in caste, occupation, status, and rights are fixed by birth. And this caste system, we know it still exists in India, but its forms and functions are constantly changing now. It's not like, all it is constantly changing. So many changes happened in the caste system of India, but still it exists in India. Next form is social classes. So this concept of social classes may have existed for long, but it got a more definite origin in the feudal estates of Europe. Social classes got a more definite origin in the feudal estates of Europe, and the social classes are the result of economic factors. So, according to Marx, the ownership of the means of production is something or the major factor which shaped the class system. So, according to Marx, the ownership of the means of production is the major factor which shaped the class system, which means those who own the means of production, like by means of production, we are referring to land and capital. So, those who own the means of production form one class, and those who do not own any means of production forms the other class. So these are the two classes explained by Marx. One who owns the production, other who don't have any production, who don't own any means of production. And this is only Marx's classification, but so many other classifications were provided by different thinkers also. Okay, so this is the another form of social stratification given by T.B. Bottom. So these are the four forms of social stratification given by T.B. Bottom: slavery, estates, caste, and class. Okay. Now, inequality. What is inequality? So, inequality means patterns of unequal access to social resources. Okay, it is inequality is commonly, or social inequality is commonly known as patterns of unequal access to social resources. So we know that in every society, some people hold a greater share of the valued resources like money, property, education, health, power. So only some part of the society or some group of people hold the share of these valued resources. Okay, and they have more power than other people. So these social resources or these valued resources can be divided into four forms of capital according to Pierre Bourdieu. So Pierre Bourdieu divided these social resources into four forms of capital, which are economic capital in the form of material assets and income. Economic capital like material assets, land or something like that, and income. Then there is cultural capital like educational qualifications and status. Then there is social capital like networks of contacts and social associations. And there is symbolic capital like social status and good reputation. So these are the four forms of capital which Pierre Bourdieu proposed. So he divided social resources into these four forms of capital. Okay. Then Rousseau identified two kinds of this concept of inequality existed long before sociology developed as a discipline. And during that time, Rousseau identified two kinds of inequality among people. First one is natural or physical inequality, and this refers to the difference of age, health, bodily strength, and mental ability. So that is the first kind of inequality, which is natural or physical inequality. The second one is moral or political inequality, and this one refers to the differences in privileges that are established or authorized by the consent of people themselves. So the second one is moral or political inequality refers to differences in privileges, okay, like power and honor. So these are the two kinds of inequality identified by Rousseau: natural or physical inequality and moral or political inequality. Okay. Now, Loughbose and Holborn, in their book Sociology, Themes and Perspective, they clubbed or they put together all types of inequalities into two broad types of inequalities. So they clubbed different types of inequalities into two broad types of inequalities, which are inequality of power and inequality of material well-being. Okay, so these are the two types proposed by Loughbose and Holborn. So according to Marxist thinkers, they attribute or they connect the inequalities in societies to the unequal access to the forces of production, like they do in case of everything. They connected inequalities in societies also to the unequal access to the forces of production. So according to this Marxist, okay, sorry, some network issue happened. So we can continue now. So they said that this is what, according to Marxist thinkers, this is what leads to inequalities in societies. But on the other hand, according to functionalist thinkers, functionalists argued that inequalities in society are inevitable, or they said that inequality is needed in society because they ensure that all kinds of jobs get done in the society. So according to functionalists, inequality in society are inevitable because due to this inequality, it ensures that all kinds of jobs get done in the society. So what they are meaning is that if there was no inequality or if there was equality and people had the choice to choose whatever job they wanted to choose, do, it is obvious that every people would choose jobs or white collar jobs or jobs with higher pay scale. So there would be no people to do other kind of manual jobs or something like that. So according to, they viewed or they approached this inequality in society in that kind of a way. So they said that because of this inequality, eh, it ensures that all kinds of jobs get done in the society. But their view got criticized in so many levels, but as they did also, they approached inequality from a functionalist view. Then there were attempts have also been made to measure the inequalities in society, like scientists or thinkers try to measure inequalities. It mainly happened in economic inequalities, or people try to measure economic inequalities in objective terms. So Gini coefficient is used by the economists to measure economic inequalities at the national level. I just mentioned it here. So Gini coefficient is used by the economists to measure economic inequalities at the national level. Okay. Then Peter Saunders on equality. So Peter Saunders identified equality as a multifarious phenomenon and he attributed three characteristics to it. Okay. Peter Saunders attributed three characteristics to equality. So he's here talking about equality. So what are the three characteristics? Formal or legal equality, equality of opportunity, and equality of outcome. Okay. So first one is formal or legal equality. So in most modern democracies, we can identify or we can find formal or legal equality in most of the modern democracies. For example, we can take Indian Constitution. Our Indian Constitution provides right to equality. But in practice, it may not be same as the theory, but still there is Indian, according to our Constitution, there is right to equality for each and every citizen of India. So like that, we can find this formal or legal equality in most modern democracies. Then the next one is equality of opportunity. So this equality of opportunity is a symbol of merit-based societies. And but even though it is a symbol of merit-based society, the practicality of this is also questioned, but it is considered as a symbol of merit-based society. Third one is equality of outcome. So it is a symbol of an egalitarian society. So equality of outcome is a symbol of egalitarian society, which provides for equality in terms of outcome as well. Without considering efforts put by the members, equality is given to everyone in terms of outcome also. But even though he talked about the characteristics of equality, he also identified the fact that he talked about three characteristics, isn't it? Formal legal equality, equality of opportunity, and equality of outcome. But he also identified that this equality of opportunity is sometimes in contradiction to the other two equalities. Okay, see, he also talked about that equality of opportunity may be sometimes in contradiction to the other two equalities. Now we can move to our next concept, which is hierarchy. So in general, we can say inequalities lead to social stratification, and the social stratification leads to hierarchy. Okay, inequalities in the society leads to stratification of the society into various classes or various groups, and this social stratification further leads to development of a hierarchy. Okay, so we can say when this social inequalities are arranged in an order, then the hierarchy is formed. So hierarchy can be called as a ordered arrangement of inequality. If we want to, we can explain it as like that. Hierarchy can be called as an ordered arrangement of inequalities. And this hierarchy denotes presence of multiple strata in a society placed one above the other. You know what is hierarchies? It is like a ordered arrangement of one strata over the other. Okay, so this hierarchy denotes the presence of multiple strata, or hierarchy itself denotes the social stratification in a society. And these hierarchies can be present in different forms, like they can be caste hierarchy, class hierarchy, gender hierarchy, or political hierarchy. It can be present in different forms. Okay, and this hierarchy results into unequal opportunities and unequal rewards. So the people who are in the top of the hierarchy get more opportunities and more rewards, but when it comes to the people in the lower levels of hierarchy, they only get low opportunities, or like they may get mostly punishments instead of rewards. So hierarchy results into unequal opportunities and unequal rewards. And according to Marxist thinkers, hierarchy promotes conflict as well. So according to Marxist thinkers, because of this inequality it creates in the society, it may leads to conflict in the society. But according to functionalists, this hierarchy is a symbol of division of labor in the society, and it is necessary for working of the social system. Is it clear? So according to Marxist, hierarchy promotes conflict, but according to functionalists, hierarchy is a symbol of division of labor in the society, and it is necessary for working of the social system. Okay. So now, theories of stratification. So we can, you can define this, or we can study this concept of stratification through different perspectives or through different views. like structural functionalist view, Marxian view, like that. So the first one is structural functionalist view. So the structural, we already talked about this in the previous concepts, but let's go deep into this structural functionalist view of stratification. So the structural functionalists believe that social stratification in society exists because it serves an important role in the functioning of the society. Like they approached almost every social phenomenons. Here also, according to structural functionalists, social stratification exists because it serves an important role in the functioning of the society. Okay, and these functionalists see existence of different strata in terms of their interdependence, cooperation, and serving the function of integration of society. Okay, according to structural functionalists, these social strata are interdependent and they cooperate with each other, and they, you know, play a major role in the integration of society. And thinkers like Parsons, Davis and Moore, W.L. Warner. So these are some of the thinkers who made important contributions towards the development of this structural functionalist view of social stratification. So according to Parsons, he defined this social stratification as every society is based upon consensus in terms of norms and values. And he also said that, just a second. Yeah. So according to Parsons, every society is based upon consensus in terms of norms and values. And we know that in every society there exist certain kinds of norms and values. And the conformity to these norms is considered desirable in our society. And when we conform or when we follow these norms in society, we get rewarded in various ways. So this differential conformity and differential rewards is something which forms strata in society, or which something causes stratification in society. So people in a society, people have a tendency to follow social norms and they compare their performance with these norms. And those who perform in greater conformity to these norms get bigger rewards and they get ranked higher. So that is how Parsons approached this concept. So he compared this social stratification process with how people follow, or how people try to follow this norms and values of society, and how this leads to social stratification. And he also argued that society has certain functional prerequisites which need to be fulfilled. And social stratification helps to fulfill these functional prerequisites of society. Okay, so he said that society has certain functional prerequisites which need to be fulfilled, and the social stratification helps to fulfill these functional prerequisites. And he said that stratification is inevitable as value consensus is an integral part of all types of societies. So this was Parsons' opinion. Then W.L. Warner, in his book, The Social Life of a Modern Community, he emphasized on social status instead of economic class. So in this book, he emphasized on social status instead of economic class. And he observed and he considered three variables, which are education, occupation, and income, as the determinants of status, or as something which determines social status, which are the education, occupation, and income. And there are not only this, but there are other criteria also which determine social status, like friendship, membership, like membership of voluntary groups, leisure activities, etc. So according to W.L. Warner, these are the factors which determines someone's social status in a society. Like factors like mainly factors like education, occupation, and income. Then there are other criteria like friendship, membership of voluntary groups, and leisure activities. So similarly, Davis and Moore, in their book some principles of social stratification. So in this book, they put forward their functionalist theory of social stratification, and they observe that there is no society which is not stratified, and strata exist on the basis of differential reward. So they said that stratification exists in almost every society. There is no society which is not stratified, or every society is stratified. And they said that societies need these stratified positions for its proper function. That was their opinion. Okay. Societies need these stratified positions for its proper function. And they functionalists considered this social stratification as a mechanism for role allocation, or allocating roles to various individuals. And they considered it as like, in this process, more important positions will get filled by more talented people for the benefit of all. That was functionalist approach towards this social stratification. But this functionalist view came under so many criticisms, and Melvin Tumin was one of the biggest critics of this approach. So according to Melvin Tumin, he defined social stratification as an arrangement of any social group or society into a hierarchy of positions which is unequal with regards to power, property, social evaluation, and psychic gratification. So that is how Melvin Tubin explained social stratification. According to him, social stratification is an arrangement of any social group or society into a hierarchy of positions which is unequal, related to power, property, social evaluation, and psychic gratification. Okay. Now, Marxian view on social stratification. So, according to Marxians, in every mode of production, a minority or a minority group gains control over forces of production, and so the society gets divided into two broad strata. Like we already studied about this in the class about Marx. So due to this, the society gets divided into two broad strata, which are the haves or the ruling class, and the have-nots or the subject class. Okay, so this stratification is most important in capitalism. Okay, so the society gets divided into two broad strata, the haves and the have-nots. And from the Marxian perspective, this system of stratification is derived from the relation of the social groups to the forces of production. So according to Marxist, the social groups or the social stratification also developed as a result of the relation between social groups to forces of production. And the units or strata in this social stratification, Marxist thinkers call this as, or define this as, classes. Okay. So the units or strata are defined as classes in Marxian perspective. So a class is defined as a social group whose members share the same relations to the forces of production. A class is a social group whose members share the same relations to the forces of production. So Marx also talks about other strata, like not only class, but Marx also talks about other intermediary strata like petty bourgeoisie and lumpen proletariat. Okay. And according to him, this intermediate strata, we already learned this also in the, about proletarianization and bourgeoisization. We already learned this in the previous classes. But anyway, this, according to Marx, this intermediate strata will also dissolve through the processes of proletarianization and bourgeoisization, and they get subsumed under the two broad strata only. And Marx also had an optimistic view about social stratification, and he sees class struggle leading to a revolution that will ultimately lead to class equality in the society. So according to Marx, or he had an optimistic view about social stratification, and he said that this class struggle would eventually lead to a revolution, and as a result of that evolution, it will ultimately lead to class equality in the society. Okay. So that was Marxian perspective or Marxian view on social stratification. Next is underclass. So this is a concept used by neoliberal sociologists, and this is similar to the Marxist concept of lumpen proletariat. So this concept of underclass was popularized in sociology by Charles Murray, and according to him, this is a stratum or strata which is a result of unequal economics and misplaced government policies. A strata which formed as a result of unequal economics and misplaced government policies. And this is born when, or this underclass is born or formed when people have very less bargaining power and they are at the mercy of the employer. Okay, that is how he explained underclass. But he also warns that this growing class may also cause threat to social cohesion. So he also warned that this development of this or growth of this underclass may cause threat to the social cohesion. Okay. Now, Weber's Trinitarian view of social stratification. Now, let's discuss about Weber's view on social stratification. Okay. So, Weber, we know that Marx explains stratification in terms of economic factors. But Weber refused to, reduce the stratification only to economic factors, or we can say only to class, in a point of view from class only. But Weber saw this social stratification as a multi-dimensional process. And according to Weber, the society is stratified on the basis of economics, prestige or status, and power. So, according to Weber, the society is stratified on the basis of economics, prestige or status, and power. And class, according to Weber, is not a community, but it is merely a group of people in the same economic or market situation. Or it is a group of people who share a similar position in a market situation. And then Weber used the term life chances, which he used to refer to the rewards and advantages afforded by the market capacity to differentiate different classes. And those who share similar life chances share similar class. Is it clear? So according to Weber, those who share similar life chances share similar class. And on the basis of this life chances, Weber see different classes. Weber proposed or Weber sees different classes like propertied upper class, property less white collar workers, petty bourgeoisie, and manual working class. So this differentiation is based on the life chances. So based on this, he proposed or he talked about different classes like propertied upper class, property less white collar workers, petty bourgeoisie, and manual working class. Okay. And he then proposed the concept of status group. So just look here, Weber's view is called as Trinitarian view, which means that he discussed about this theory of stratification related to three terms or three concepts. So first he talked about in terms of class, then he proposed the concept of status group. So the second one is status group. So the class refers to unequal distribution of economic rewards. But here, status refers to unequal distribution of social honor. Is it clear? Class means unequal distribution of economic rewards, but status refers to unequal distribution of social honor. And some markers of status or the criteria of status include income, family background, education, etc. So these are the markers of a social status. And the status relates to consumption of goods produced, while class relates to economic production. Is it clear the difference between status and class? Status relates to consumption of goods produced, while class relates to economic production. Okay. Then after that, so first he talked about stratification in terms of class, then talked about in terms of status, then he proposed the concept of party as the third element according to which society is stratified. Okay. And these parties can be found in the political order. And according to Weber, parties are always structures struggling for domination. They are always structures struggling for domination. And he identifies two types of parties, which are parties of patronage and parties of principle. Okay, is it clear? So these are the three perspectives or 3 point of views in which Weber discussed about stratification. First in terms of class, then in terms of social status, then in terms of party. Okay. Now let's move to the different dimensions of social stratification. First one is social stratification of class. Okay. This concept or this social stratification of class was popularized in sociology by Marx. And this social stratification of class is different from other types or other forms of class, mainly because of some of its particular characteristics. So these are the particular characteristics of social stratification based on class, which are: class stratification is fluid and open. It is fluid and open, which means that there are no legal or traditional sanctions on mobility between different strata. No need for any legal or traditional sanctions in order to some person or group to move between different strata, which means class stratification is fluid and open. Anyone can achieve those different stratas, or anyone can free to move from one class to another. There is no one need any legal or traditional sanctions to do this. Okay. Next is class positions are in some part achieved and not ascribed. You know what is ascribed means? Ascribed means handed over from one generation to another generation, or like it got it from by birth, got by birth, something we get through our birth. But achieved means something we get by hard working or through our work. So class positions are in some part achieved, not ascribed. It is more achieved in nature. Then class as an economic basis. So these are the major characteristics of social stratification based on class. Then Weber defined class as a body of people having identical position in a market situation. So according to Weber, class is a body of people having identical means similar position in a market situation. And he broadly defined class structure in terms of 4 classes. They are propertied upper class, white collar workers, petty bourgeoisie, and manual laborers. Okay, we already mentioned about this in the previous session. So he defined class structure in terms of 4 classes: propertied upper class, white collar workers, petty bourgeoisie, and manual laborers. And Weber actually rejected the Marxist idea of polarization, like different classes tend to polarize towards two classes. So Weber rejected this idea of polarization, and according to Weber, these inequalities are highly dynamic. And he considered, or he talked about social stratification not only based on class, but what are the other factors which he considered while describing about social stratification. There is also status and power dimensions to inequalities. We already studied that besides class, there is also status and power dimensions to inequalities. And there were other scholars also made various classifications, like Baltimore. So Baltimore differentiated 4 types of classes, that is upper class, middle class, working class, and peasantry. So he differentiated 4 types of classes: upper class, middle class, working class, and peasantry. Then Giddens. According to Giddens, there are 3 main sources of class power, which are the possession of property, qualifications, and physical labor power. And these sources of class power give rise to a 3-class structure, which is a dominant or upper class based on property, an intermediate or middle class based on credentials, and a working or lower class based on labor power. So this was Giddens's classification of social stratification based on class power. Then Pierre Bourdieu in his book An Invitation to Reflexive Sociology, he talked about, different classes. So according to him, it is life choices more than class. It is lifestyle choices are more important today. So according to Pierre Bourdieu, rather than class, it is lifestyle choices which are important today. And then Ralph Dahrendorf in his book Class Stratification, Ralph Dahrendorf said that class stratification is not so much rife with antagonism as Marx has visualized. So that was Ralph Dahrendorf's opinion on this social stratification of class. Okay, now let's discuss about social stratification of status group. So status is often seen in terms of the social position, isn't it? It is often seen or considered in terms of social position. So in earlier times, status was seen in terms of ascriptive values like caste, nobleman, clergy, estate owner. So it was mainly seen in terms of ascriptive values or ascriptive status. But now status is both achieved as well as ascribed. Okay, is it clear? Earlier it was seen in terms of ascriptive values, but now it is both achieved as well as ascriptive. It is considered both from two point of views, like it can be ascriptive or it can be achieved. And the status groups are generally more closed as compared to class groups. We already said that class groups are more fluid and open, but when it comes to status groups, they are more closed compared to class groups. So according to Weber, caste is the most developed form of status-based stratification. So according to Weber, caste is the most developed form of status-based stratification. Then Pakulski and Waters in their book Death of Class argued that status dimension is becoming more important in post-industrial societies. Other than class, now in post-industrial societies, status dimension is more important. And consumption is now based on status, or it is not on the basis of economic or occupation, but now consumption is based on status. And this rising consumerism has promoted status. So this was Pakulski and Waters' opinion on social stratification of status groups. Then, according to W.L. Warner in his book, The Social Life of a Modern Community, he emphasized on social status instead of economic class. Okay, he emphasized on social status instead of economic class, and he considers three variables, which are education, occupation, and income, as the determinants of status. Then Pierre Bourdieu in his book An Invitation to Reflexive Sociology, he said that lifestyle choices are important today. Okay, lifestyle rather than class, according to Pierre Bourdieu, lifestyle choices are more important today. And he said that this individual are now more shaped by lifestyle choices rather than by more traditional indicators like occupation. Is it clear? So that social stratification of gender, it is one of the most fundamental forms of stratification. And we know that this occupational segregation or this occupational inequality in society reinforces or strengthens the social stratification in society. And even in this time, top positions in jobs are still out of reach of women, isn't it? And because of this, even though women got, comparing to older days, women got some more freedom now, and they are able to go to work and achieve their dreams, but still top positions are still out of reach of women, or we can only find a few women in the top positions in our society. And because of this, the stratification which prevailed within the family is now extended to the workplace as well, or the stratification based on gender is now we can identify in workplace as well. And according to a feminist sociologist, Anne Oakley, according to her opinion, sexual differences are created by nature, but gender is a concept which is created by society. And women are oppressed as a class by men, and these patriarchal structures are geographically and historically almost universal. We can find these patriarchal structures in different forms in almost every society. But even though we can, when we analyze the recent studies, it shows that women are doing considerably better than even before. But still, there is more to achieve, or still there is more, changes to happen in case of uh, gender inequalities existing in our society. But anyway, women are doing considerably better than ever before. Next is social stratification of race. So, a race is a group of people who are perceived by a given society as biologically or culturally different from others. So, sociologists view race as merely an ideological construct which based on. Just a second. Sorry. So, sociologists view race as just like an ideological construct based on physical differences. And this race is used as a tool of domination, discrimination, and spreading inequality in the form of racial stratification. So, in the 18th century, many anthropologists and researchers tried to, understand this idea of race through a scientific point of view, and it was Joseph Arthur D. Gobineau who gave the first major racial classification in terms of three groups, which are white or Caucasian, black or Negroid, and yellow or Mongolian. So he was the first person to give a major racial classification in the middle of 19th century. And this racial stratification has affected different societies differently. It is still existing in different societies. It is a big problem, and racism is the worst form of racial stratification. Okay. Then social stratification based on ethnicity. So, what is ethnicity? It is purely a social or cultural aspect in its meaning. And an ethnic group may have, it may be based on a common language, or maybe based on a common history or national origin or lifestyle. So, with this common change in common aspect, an ethnic group can be known as an ethno-religious group or an ethno-linguistics group, or there are so many other subgroups of ethnicity. And people learn their ethnic differences as a process of socialization and with the use of exclusionary devices like marriage. So it is a purely social or cultural thing. Then racial identities, as we mentioned about race in the previous section, so that racial identities always remain same. But when it comes to ethnic identities, they are revised over time. Okay, ethnic identities are revised over time, and one ethnic group may subsumed by another under different situations. For example, we can say if we take our Indian society, we can find different ethnic groups in our Indian society, isn't it? There are numerous ethnic groups in Indian society. But when we migrate to another foreign country, there everyone belonging to different ethnic groups in India is considered as one ethnic group, which is Indians, isn't it? So, like that, one ethnic group may subsumed by another under different situations. And this ethnic stratification is dependent upon the processes which a society has undergone, like assimilation, melting point, pluralistic coexistence, and antagonistic coexistence. Okay. For example, we can say during the process of assimilation, new immigrant groups new immigrant groups adopt the attitudes and culture of the existing dominant groups. So ethnic stratification is dependent upon these processes, like different processes. With changing processes, the essence of that stratification, or the basic pattern of that stratification also changes. So when it is through the process of assimilation, the new immigrant groups adopt the attitudes and culture of the existing dominant group. If it is through melting pot concept, then different ethnic groups merge together. So like that, the ethnic stratification is dependent upon the processes which a society has undergone. Okay. Now let's move to our next concept, which is social mobility. So social mobility means transition of individuals or groups from one position in the social hierarchy to another, which means from one stratum to another. So it is the movement of individuals or groups from one stratum to another. That is social mobility. So functionalists like Parsons believed that this mobility is a result of the process of differentiation in society and role filling by those who suit them the most. But Marx, on the other hand, believed that the high rate of social mobility 𝙤𝙤𝙬𝙧𝙧, which so he called this high rate of social mobility as 𝙤𝙤𝙬𝙧. This will weaken class solidarity. So both had different perspectives. According to functionalists like Parsons, they believe that this is a result of the process of differentiation in society. But Marx believed that this high rate of social mobility will only weaken the class solidarity. And Marx foresees this downward mobility in capitalism when the petty bourgeoisie will sink down into the proletariat class. Okay. So each thinker had different perspective towards this concept of social mobility. So when we take our traditional societies, the instances of mobility were very low in old societies or traditional societies. So when we take a traditional society, there were, stratification was ascriptive in nature in traditional societies, isn't it? In modern societies, it is more achieved also, but in traditional societies, stratification was mostly ascriptive. So because of that, mobility was also limited in traditional societies. And Andrew Bettel, in his book Caste, Class and Power, he has shown how mobility is difficult in a closed and stratified caste system. So through this book, he has shown that mobility is very much difficult in a closed and stratified caste system. Then M.N. Srinivas, in a study of courts, showed that in such a system, alternate methods like Sanskritization are evolved to move up socially. But this moving up socially is only affects, or it affects only on the cultural aspect, not the structural aspects. So these are examples of works which show the difficulties of social mobility in a closed and stratified caste system. Works of Andrew Bettel and M.N. Srinivas. So we will learn about this Sanskritization and M.N. Srinivas later in other chapters. So I'm not going deep into these concepts here. Then, as we said earlier, mobility said that instances of mobility in traditional societies are very much low. But mobility in industrial societies or modern societies is more, widespread. So in developed countries, intergeneration mobility is much higher than in developing and traditional societies. Okay. And when a society transforms from traditional to modern, it becomes more fluid. Just a second. Yeah. So when comparing to traditional society, when it comes to industrial and modern society, mobility is widespread. And in developed countries, intergenerational mobility is much higher than developing and traditional societies. And as a society makes a transition from traditional to modern, it becomes more fluid. Okay. And one of the first comprehensive account of mobility were in such societies were given by Sorokin in his book Social Mobility. And in this book, he argued that mobility is functional for society because it promotes efficiency and social order. And he compared vertical mobility to stairs and elevators and as bloodstreams in human body. And then from a functionalist perspective, Davis and Moore in their book Some Principles of Stratification, they theorize that it is the reward system of the society that facilitates individual mobility in the society. Okay. Now, social mobility, open and closed system. So, open systems are those systems which offer free mobility from one stratum to another, and there are no barriers which cannot be overcome. So, modern societies are considered as such open systems because in this modern societies, one may reach any social position by because of their hard work, skill, knowledge, or efforts. So, modern societies are considered as such open systems, and this open systems function like this, or they are open like this because such systems treat individuals equally. And so because of that, open systems function like this, they have an open nature. But closed systems on the other hand, they are marked by rigid boundaries which are unassailable, and individuals cannot cross their strata in ordinary circumstances in this closed systems. And this, closed nature is often caused by the ascriptive nature of membership to particular strata or exclusivity of membership. So if they if the society had an achieve kind of nature to the membership and all, anyone can achieve that particular position. But since in this kind of closed societies, it is facilitated by the ascriptive nature of membership to particular strata, so because of that, it has rigid boundaries. Okay. So an example for this, we can say caste system, gender stratification, ethnic stratification, etc. All these are examples of such closed stratification. Now, Sorokin listed, now we can move to sources and causes of mobility, okay? And then Sorokin listed 4 primary factors affecting mobility, which are, first one is demographic factors like age, sex, race. Factors like this affect social mobility, isn't it? For example, we can say older people have only few chances when compared to younger people for mobility, isn't it? So like that, demographic factors affect mobility. Next is talent and ability, isn't it? Talent also influence social mobility, or the people's ability to do this social mobility. Then there is faulty distribution of individuals in social positions. So sometimes the structural factors can force some people to do or land into wrong positions, and this would hamper their chances of mobility. So faulty distribution of individuals in social positions also affect people's chances for mobility. Then the last one is the change of the social environment. Okay. Or we can say phenomena like industrializations or legal restrictions can lead to structural changes, and this can lead to collective mobility. Okay. So these are the 4 primary factors according to Sorokin which affects mobility. But in general, there are so many other factors which affect mobility, and such factors can be both personal and structural. So these are some of the examples for such factors affecting mobility, like industrialization and urbanization, education, social capital and social status, occupation, social and cultural values, environmental changes, social movements, law and constitution, migration, physical features, technology, subjective factors, cultural factors, and political factors. So these are some of the factors which affect mobility. And I already said that these factors can be structural factors or personal factors. So in this factors like, education, opportunity, and all that is personal factors. But at the same times, there are also structural factors also. Then now we can move to the last session of our class, which is types of mobility. So on a broader level, mobility can be classified into various types. Like the first type is horizontal mobility and vertical mobility. Okay. So horizontal mobility means moving within the same status or class category. Okay. It means moving within the same status or class category. an example of this is, we can take an example of a nurse who leaves one hospital to take a position as a nurse at another hospital. So in this case, the nurse is moving from one status to one role to other, but both of that roles are in the same status. So that kind of mobility or movement is known as horizontal movement. Then there is vertical movement. So this vertical movement, there are of two types, ascending and descending, or we can say social climbing and social sinking. Okay. And then there are upward and downward mobility. So upward and downward mobility are two subtypes of vertical mobility, and this may happen due to change in one or more than one basis, like status, class, or power. And examples for vertical mobility, we can say a promotion or demotion, a change in income, or a marriage to a person of higher or lower status, or a movement to a better or worse neighborhood. So in these situations, a person's can do social climbing or can do social sinking. So these are examples for vertical mobility. Either the person can move upward or downward. Next type is intragenerational and intergenerational mobility. So intragenerational mobility is also known as career mobility, and it refers to a change in an individual's social standing, especially in the workforce, which occur when an individual works his way up or down in the occupational ladder. Okay, when when an individual works his way up or down in the occupational ladder or in their job. So this is or we can say career progression of an individual is an example for this intragenerational mobility. Then there is intergenerational mobility. It refers to a change in social standing across generations. Okay, across generations, if there is a change happens in the social status of a person, it is known as intergenerational. For example, it occurs when a person from a lower class family graduates from a medical school. Isn't it? Until that generation, that family was belonged to a lower status in the social group. But when this person graduates from a medical school, suddenly their social status move upwards, or upward mobility happens. So that kind of mobility is known as intergenerational mobility. Okay. Next type is structural and individual mobility. So structural mobility represents the major upheavals and changes in society which enhance the opportunities of a large group of people to move up the social ladder at the same time. And this may lead to movement because movement as a whole stratum or even the whole nation. Okay. And an example for this we can see in M.N. Srinivasa's concept of dominant caste. So in that concept, he shows how the position of resources like land leads to the shifting of a whole stratum in a local hierarchy. So M.N. Srinivasa's concept of dominant caste we can take as an example for this structural mobility. So some major upheavals and changes happening in the society which leads to the movement of a group of people or a large number of people. It is known as structural mobility. So it is a mobility of a group of people. But on the other hand, there is individual mobility. It is a micro view of mobility. And so individual mobility is determined or influenced by personal characteristics or individual characteristics like race, ethnicity, gender, religion, level of education, skills, determination, occupation, or place of residence, or their health. So individual mobility is determined by this individual characteristics. And the opportunity for individual mobility can be restricted by several factors. For example, we can say women or in certain ethnic groups or disabled person. For that kind of people, or like women or disabled person, they only have a limited scope for upward mobility in our society. So this opportunity for individual mobility is restricted by several factors. Okay. So the last type is absolute and relative mobility. So this absolute mobility measures whether and by how much living standards in a society have increased or decreased, and it is often measured by what percentage of people have higher or lower incomes or social well-being than their parents. Okay, so the more the absolute mobility comparison with our previous generation, how well our social status has become. Then relative mobility, on the other hand, it refers to if we can say if one person moves up in relative terms, another person by definition must have moved down. So that kind of mobility is known as relative mobility. It may sound some confusing, so I'll clear this using an example. For example, we can take a person. So he joined at a job, and at that time we can say his income was 30,000 at the beginning of his career, but his salary increased to 80,000 after 10 years. So in in absolute term, or in case of absolute mobility, he had upward absolute mobility, isn't it? His income actually increased, so his social status would also increase. So in absolute terms, he got he has done absolute upward mobility. But at the same time, some other persons who joined him during the same time of that person joined the job, their salary became 1 lakh after 10 years. So after 10 years, this person's salary became 80,000, and the other people who joined the job at the same time got 1 lakh. Then relating to that people, now his mobility is his relative mobility became relative downward mobility. So that is the difference between absolute mobility and relative mobility. Relative mobility is always compared to, or it is a relative, it is relative in nature. Is it clear? So that is absolute and relative mobility. So these are the types of mobility. We discussed about 4 types of mobility. Now let's discuss some questions related to our class today. First question, what are the 4 sub-processes of social stratification? Which are differentiation, evaluation, ranking, rewarding. Then, according to Weber, what are the 3 elements to which society is stratified? They are class, status, and parties. Then, according to Sorokin, what are the 4 factors affecting mobility? They are demographic factors, talent and ability, faulty distribution of individuals in social positions, and the change of social environment. Then, what are the 4 forms of social stratification by C.B. Baltimore? They are slavery, estate, caste, and class. Then, what are the 2 kinds of inequality identified by Rousseau among people? They are natural or physical inequality and moral or political inequality. Then, what are the 2 broad types of inequalities proposed by Haralambos and Holborn? They are inequality of power and inequality of material well-being. Then the last question, what is the term used by Weber to refer to the rewards and advantages afforded by market capacity to differentiate different classes? The term is life chances. Okay. So these are the questions for today. Now, okay, so if you are interested to join our UGC NET Sociology course, you can join now. The admissions are open now and our actual classes will be starting soon. So you can contact these numbers for taking admission, or if you have any doubts regarding the admission process or course, you can contact these numbers. And Professor Academy is also providing coaching for these subjects also. So if you are interested to join, try to join as soon as possible so that you can start your preparation as early as possible, and you will be all prepared by June. Okay. So if you are interested, please join our course. It would be very much useful for you. So that's all for today. See you in another class. Until then, goodbye. Good night.